What we saw on the streets of London yesterday was completely unacceptable. To go on the streets of London wanting to pursue violence and smashing up property, people swinging from flags off the cenotaph and defacing the statue of Churchill. I think people going about their everyday lives in this country will just think that is unacceptable, and I want to make sure that they feel the full force of the law.
The University of Lincoln, home to over 10,000 students. This is just one of many universities that will be affected by the vote to increase higher education tuition fees. The Liberal Democrats signed a pledge before the election, promising that they would gradually abolish tuition fees, therefore encouraging more people to further their education. However, the new Tory Lib Dem coalition decided in their alliance agreement that a vote would take place on raising the tuition fees. The bill proposed to raise the tuition fee cap from £3,290 to £9,000, with the average payback taking 30 years. Research conducted by the NUS and HSBC suggests that 8 out of 10 young people would be put off applying to university by these changes. As a result, several student protests were planned, so we spoke to Chris Charney about his involvement.
The march really is the headline in a long campaign. As people will have heard, government that have been voted in the coalition have proposed through a review that tuition fees for higher education be capped at around 12,000, which would make higher education a free market. We have a wide range of great students at this university, and nationally we have a great collective student body, and I think the main argument is that when fees were increased to 3,000, government promised that student satisfaction would be increased, students would get more time with their tutors, general life of a student would improve. It hasn't. The Comprehensive Spending Review recommended and implemented cuts of up to 40% within the higher education budget. That means that universities that are heavily reliant on government funding, like Lincoln, for example, who probably turns over about 80 million annually, about 54 million of that is government funding. So if you cut that by 25%, we're losing a hell of a lot of money every year, which obviously has an impact on students. 24-hour library won't be able to happen. We will have to cut sports and societies. We won't be able to give away free hoodies. You'll get less teaching time with your academics. You'll get less printing credit. Bursaries were cut last year, so students that start next year won't have any financial support. There'll be reductions in bursaries nationally. So all these things that help make your time at university great and worthwhile will have been cut.
We then asked Chris about the event Demolition 2010.
I think the march is really about sending a message to our national government and our local MPs that we will not stand by and have these decisions made for us. We have opinions, we have views, and we very much want to be a part of the discussion. What I'll be using the day as an opportunity to is to really shake up our Lincoln MP and let him know that we can take 600 people to London. Imagine what we could do in Lincoln, given the amount of time and resource we've ploughed in. But it's really about sending a message and placing pressure on the collective government and individual MPs that this isn't acceptable. We'll not stand by and let it happen, and we can take action. And this is a small indication of what we can do nationally.
Wednesday, 10th of November 2010. The day that 50,000 students descended upon London and marched from Parliament Square. Exit polls state that over 50% of the under-25s at the recent general election voted for the Liberal Democrats, a huge amount on the promise of tuition fee freezes.
You know, there's a lot of Lib Dem councillors around the country who promised that the student fees would not go up and they should be leaving the party in droves. I think this is the end of the Liberal Democrats, and certainly, you know, Clegg is finished now. He's an absolute arsehole. To have thought that the British public would not see what he was about. I think they've taken us, you know, for idiots, and we're not idiots. And I hope this shows that actually there's very bright young people in this country, and they will fight for an education for all. I hope this inspires anyone who didn't come to today's demo to come on the next one. I think there should be loads more. I think the trade unionists, the workers, anybody who's unemployed or a claimant or is disabled should be getting onto the streets. The pensioners should be getting onto the streets. We should have mass civil disobedience in this country and show this government up for what they are.
If you're angry and you know it, and you really want to show it, if you can't afford to pay, stop your thing.
No ifs, no buts, no education cuts. No ifs, no buts, no education cuts.
TUC call for a general strike. Students and workers united, we can beat the Tories and Lib Dems.
Don't tell me that increasing tuition fees isn't going to put off bright students from ordinary backgrounds from going to college. Don't tell us lies. And don't tell us that personal debt isn't a problem for ordinary people like us. Don't tell us that.
I think it's a very, very powerful message. Some 50,000 students descending on Westminster. I think it will send a very, very powerful message. And I think in particular, it's something that will impact on Lib Dem MPs, because of course they made a specific pledge and signed pledge cards to the effect that they wouldn't increase student fees. And now of course we're going to see a trebling of student fees. So I think it's going to have a dramatic impact. I hope many of them will think again. I think it's really important that students everywhere contact their local MPs to keep this issue alive, to make sure they get their local MPs on side. And if they're not on side, then to say to them at the general election, we'll make a judgment on you based in part on what you do on the student fees issue, because it's that important. But it's a great demonstration, and I think students who've come out here can be rightly proud of themselves.
The day would take an unexpected violent turn as protesters descended upon 30 Millbank, the Conservative HQ. These images drew both on national and international attention and would become the catalyst for future violent protests in the days to come, even though such displays were condemned by NUS President Alan Porter.
I absolutely condemn the actions of a small minority who have used violent means to hijack this protest.
December 10th, 1 month on from the first of many student demonstrations, the House of Commons have since decided that the tuition fee cap be raised to £9,000. Lincoln MP Carl McCartney defended his party's actions, saying,
"The current system for funding students' personal finance and that for funding universities is no longer fit for purpose. A pure graduate tax is not the right vehicle to reform higher education. Promotes world-class competitiveness in teaching and research. These cuts are Labour's legacy. These cuts are Labour cuts."
We caught up again with Lincoln Student Union President Chris Charley to get his take on the verdict.
Yesterday's result was appalling. Obviously students are really dissatisfied with the outcome. We need to move forward with the next leg of the campaign. We have to ensure that we fight to protect the student loans book that's being proposed to be sold on. The fee part of the campaign has very much been lost, but we need to ensure that we hold those MPs to account for their actions, and specifically the Lib Dems that promised and made a manifesto pledge to vote against it and actually voted in favour. So we have a lot of work to be doing over the next few months, but we have to ensure that the government does in the best interests of students.
Our final queries were given to the potential students.
My own personal issues with the new tuition system is it seems that we're going to be getting maybe not as well trained teachers, yet we're paying more for it. It doesn't seem right that people older than us have had to pay a lot less and then we have to pay a lot more for it now.
I want to take a gap year, which means that I will be affected by the new tuition fees. It does change a lot of things for me. It changes how much I can do on my gap year and how much work I'm going to have to do to prepare myself for the expense of university.
The future for potential students looks bleak, with the prospect of being £30,000 in debt before their 21st birthday. There is bound to be a decrease in the applications to higher education. Perhaps there will be an increase in the participation of apprenticeships and internships, so hopefully a generation will not be lost.